solved the world. Watch this.
Can I get some water? I really did need a glass of water. This is not a stunt.
Usually when something isn't a stunt, you have to say
It's
that.
100% a stunt. When was the last time a president stopped a speech to ask, can I get a glass of water? What? They would never do that. They would have water ready for him.
Next story, why people think Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are getting divorced. Okay. Let's see what we got here. So rumors of a potential divorce before Barack and Michelle emerged after Michelle skipped two high-profile events, which is traditionally attended by former presidents and their spouses, and their funeral of former President Jimmy Carter. Michelle's office gave no reasons for her absence, prompting widespread speculation about marital status issues. Social media and tabloids questioned the couple's relationship, with many noting the unusual nature of her missing such significant events. Despite the rumors, there have been no...
Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David just lit a political wildfire, aimed straight at Barack Obama's pristine legacy. No teleprompters, no corporate gloss, just an unfiltered, gloves-off reckoning. They slice through the media myth-making with surgical precision, pulling back the curtain on the contradictions that have long gone unchallenged. From drone warfare cloaked in diplomacy to those high-dollar speeches behind closed Wall Street doors, nothing escapes scrutiny. It's not a cheap shot. It's a relentless dismantling of the curated persona America thought it knew. If you believed Obama's image was bulletproof, prepare to watch the armor crack. This is raw, riveting, and unapologetically bold.
A glass of water? I'm serious. I'm thirsty. Can I get a glass of water? This is not a prank. You never seen it?
No.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh,
it's amazing.
no.
He gets a glass of Flint tap water, and I swear to God, he drinks it like this.
So serious that Jimmy Kimmel asked Jennifer Aniston on the show, is there something going on with you and Barack? I've never seen this. I just ended to Rob. Rob, is this real?
Joe Rogan didn't tiptoe into the conversation. He stormed in like a gorilla, armed with a podcast mic in one fist and a no-nonsense protein shake in the other. No filters, no formalities. He was locked and loaded, ready to tear through the carefully crafted myths and polished narratives that have surrounded Barack Obama like a monument built on charisma, nostalgia, and perfectly rehearsed soundbites. With that signature gruff voice and a tone so laid back it bordered on lethal, Rogan leaned forward, and you could feel it. He wasn't warming up. He was revving the engine for a full-throttle takedown.
Pre-presidency, 1.7. So expensive being at the White House. It was so expensive that our net worth went from 1.3 million to 12.2 million 8 years later. What an expensive lifestyle. And then you go from 12.2 million to $70 million. What do you think the average person that listens to this, do you think they connect to that, Michelle? I'm just curious. You're a very good...
He kicked things off with the kind of question that lingers in the back of everyone's mind, but rarely escapes anyone's lips. Why is Barack Obama treated like the Yoda of modern politics when his track record often leaned more toward cinematic flair than real-world results? Joe Rogan didn't hold back. He chuckled as he unraveled the paradox, describing a man who could command a room like a seasoned Broadway star, captivating crowds with poetic cadence and polished charm. But behind the curtain, deals left dangling, confusion in the aftermath, and a legacy littered with drone strikes that no amount of charisma could fully conceal.
Oh, yeah, go full screen.
What you know now, do you wish you had a third term? You know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that.
We know he wasn't really running the country.
Yeah.
We used to think he was actually running the country, and now they're like, no, he didn't even see those executive orders. That was...
Rogan didn't hold back when it came to mocking the almost mystical reverence people still have for Obama's voice. Like his smooth cadence alone could balance the federal budget or end world hunger. He riffed on how the media clung to every syllable like it was scripture from Mount Olympus, nodding along even when the substance was little more than poetic filler. Joe joked that Obama could stroll onto a stage and confidently declare, "We must innovate the innovation through innovative innovations," and journalists would break into applause, calling it visionary. Meanwhile, the average American was left scratching their head, wondering if they'd missed some profound insight or just sat through a masterclass in elegant nonsense.
Position, and you're running for 2 years and not earning an income. So all of that was in my mind. How would we manage this? So my fears came from the fact that I thought he could win. Because maybe way in the back of my mind, I was hoping that maybe he wouldn't, that this would be the last thing he would do. But I knew he had it in him to make this happen.
So, what are you thinking when you're giving this message?
Then Joe took aim at the infamous halo effect, the strange force field that seemed to keep Obama untouchable, no matter how many questionable moves trailed behind that polished smile. Rogan leaned in, dissecting the contradictions with razor-sharp wit. One moment, Obama was on stage delivering poetic sermons about peace and unity. The next, he was green-lighting drone strikes with the flick of a pen. Joe called it political yoga at its finest, twisting reality into elegant poses, staying just limber enough to dodge blame while maintaining the illusion of moral balance. It was calculated, smooth, and eerily effective.
Best people age the hardest. I think Obama was probably like a very idealistic young man
Oh Lord, what's going on now? Who's hollering? I can't even see it.
who really wanted to change the world. And that dude aged more than anybody.
I mean, I'm getting old, so I can't hear that well.
Favorite part was when Kamala Harris shows up, looks over and sees that Obama and Trump are talking to each other, and she goes like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, watch this.
There's
Look
a
at her
hem
face.
off.
Look how angry she is, dude. Look how angry she is."
Joe didn't stop at policy. He went straight for the branding, tearing into what he called one of the most elaborate political marketing campaigns in modern history. To him, Obama's presidency didn't feel like an era of leadership. It felt like a product launch. Everything, down to the iconic red, white, and blue O logo, looked like it belonged on the back of a sleek new iPhone, not the desk of the Oval Office. Joe joked that Obama wasn't just the president. He was the brand ambassador of hopeism, complete with a color scheme, tagline, and media rollout that could rival any Silicon Valley startup. Even his walk, Joe noted, seemed choreographed, like someone had fine-tuned it for maximum cinematic impact. Then came the punchlines about policy. Rogan shredded the rollout of the Affordable Care Act, comparing it to the tech world's biggest flops. According to him, it wasn't healthcare reform, it was the political version of a Windows Vista crash. Joe painted the image of a leader who promised a revolution in coverage and access, but delivered a government website that couldn't handle a traffic spike on a Tuesday. It was less House of Cards, more The Office, with a broken server and a confused help desk. And the hypocrisy didn't end there. Joe took aim at the surveillance state, blasting the irony of a Nobel Peace Prize winner turning domestic spying into what felt like a passion project. Obama, the self-declared transparency president, ended up running one of the most secretive administrations in recent memory. Rogan laughed that if Obama were a magician, he'd vanish the moment anyone asked for answers, leaving behind nothing but a charming smile and a sealed file folder.
Let's do data. Rob, can you type in Obama's net worth in 2007? What was Obama in 2007? 1.2 million, 1.3 million. Okay. So their net worth is, let's write this down. This is pre-White House. Their collective net worth was 1.3 million. Can you go to where their net worth was in 2016 when they're done being presidents? Okay. 2016. So their net worth, as expensive as it was, they went from being 1.3 million to
Then came the economy. Rogan didn't just poke holes, he ripped through the carefully woven narrative. He called out the selective memory of Obama's biggest fans who proudly waved the banner of recovery, while conveniently ignoring the ballooning national debt, stagnant wages, and the harsh reality that Main Street looked like it had been through a title fight with Mike Tyson, bloodied, bruised, and barely standing. Meanwhile, Wall Street toasted to record profits with vintage champagne. Joe laughed at the absurdity of casting Obama as a working-class hero when, in reality, many of his policies served up bailouts and backroom deals that benefited the very financial elites he once railed against. But the roast only intensified when Joe turned his sights to the post-presidency glow-up. The Netflix deals, the luxury speaking gigs, the glamorous lifestyle wrapped in talk of humility and unity. It was political theater at its finest. Rogan quipped, "If hypocrisy were an Olympic sport, Obama would take home the gold, then host a TED talk about modesty while flying in on a private jet." And just when you thought the fire was cooling, Patrick Bet David stepped in, calm, collected, and armed like a forensic analyst with a mission. If Rogan was the flamethrower, Patrick was the wrecking ball, smashing through the facade with cold facts, receipts, and timelines. He didn't waste time on surface shots. He dug deep into the legacy, questioning how a presidency peppered with scandals, backdoor surveillance, and media spin could still be revered like gospel.
Obama said he was a jackass.
The young lady seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award. What's he doing up there? He's a jack.
It's like, oh, really? Well, you.
It was about the Taylor Swift thing.
Now, all this stuff.
That guy's a jack. It wasn't even
Yeah.
that harsh of an incident. And he said it privately, and I think somebody heard it. I don't think he said it to be public.
I'm assuming all this stuff. Where's the pool? Come on, guys.
Patrick brought up the Fast and Furious operation and the IRS targeting scandal with the sharp precision of a prosecutor. Not ranting, not raving, but laying down facts with the cold clarity of someone who'd done his homework. There was no yelling, just a steady dismantling of the illusion. He questioned why Obama seemed to glide past accountability while departments under his watch unraveled like rejected sitcom pilots, except no one was laughing. It wasn't just mismanagement, it was dysfunction dressed up in PR spin. Then came the myth of the unifier. Patrick peeled back the layers of hope and change to reveal 8 years marked by deepening political tribalism and rising racial tension. The promise of healing gave way to hardened divisions, and through it all, the media treated Obama not as a public servant, but as a sacred brand. Newsrooms didn't just report on him, they canonized him. He didn't let the great communicator label slide either. Patrick pointed out that real leadership isn't just about delivering beautiful speeches. It's about forging connections, solving real problems, and taking responsibility when things go sideways. Obama, he said, only mastered the first. The rest? Delegated, deflected, or dismissed. And the media. Patrick roasted the echo chamber that followed Obama like starstruck interns, always ready with a narrative twist. If Obama made a mistake, suddenly it wasn't his fault. It was the public's inability to grasp the brilliance. Patrick didn't buy it. He said you don't need a PhD to see through charisma when it's shielding a lack of substance.
Right. So you don't go to that and you don't even comment. First of all, if I'm the Carter family, I feel disrespected. Now, maybe she would have called them and said, look, I don't want to comment on this, but I'm calling you out of respect just to tell you I'm not going to be there for my own reasons. Please understand I can't. I'm so sorry. Da-da-da-da-da. Great. Maybe she made that phone call to the Carter family.
Then Patrick went to work on Obama's foreign policy record with the precision of a battlefield surgeon. No theatrics, just a cold, clinical dissection of what he called a trail of global misfires wrapped in eloquent speeches. He painted the rise of ISIS not as a spontaneous crisis, but as a preventable catastrophe born out of hesitation, hubris, and empty rhetoric. Libya, he said, descended into chaos like a real-life horror film, one that rolled during Obama's tenure and never hit pause. Syria, a humanitarian nightmare smoldering beneath red lines that turned out to be invisible ink. While the Middle East burned, Obama was gracing magazine covers and delivering dramatic pauses from podiums that promised strength, but delivered stallouts. And Patrick didn't stop at international affairs. On the economic front, he brought receipts. Under Obama, the national debt didn't just grow, it doubled. A figure that, under any other president, would have sparked media hysteria. But in Obama's case, it was rebranded as strategic investment, as if slapping a shiny label on $16 trillion made the burden any lighter for the next generation. Then came the cultural reckoning. Patrick argued Obama didn't leave America more united. He left it more fractured, more cynical, and more tribal than ever. He highlighted how identity politics became the administration's default shield, how genuine policy criticism was too often dismissed as bigotry, and how media allies eagerly played the part.
That speech, when he gave a speech on television, this. And then they go, it kind of just went away.
It was one of the most beautiful moments in modern American history. People really actually stood up and stopped a war from happening.
Today, I authorize the Armed Forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya in support of an international effort to protect.
Patrick turned the spotlight on one of the most dangerous illusions in modern politics, when charisma gets mistaken for competence. When likability replaces leadership and a compelling personal story outweighs actual results. He argued that Obama was the prototype for the political influencer era, eloquent, polished, camera-ready, but often detached from the consequences of his own decisions. Style over substance, protected by a narrative machine that treated criticism like heresy. Then came the knockout punch, a brutal business world analogy that cut through the noise. Patrick said, if politics were a corporation, Obama would be the charismatic CEO who dazzles the boardroom with TED talk wisdom while quietly steering the company toward collapse. Applause would echo. The room would smile. But no one would read the fine print on the financials until it was too late. And by the time reality hit, he'd already taken a golden parachute and launched his next venture, monetizing inspiration, richer and more unaccountable than ever. At that point, the takedown was complete. Obama wasn't just criticized, he was dissected. First by Joe Rogan's no-filter sarcasm and streetwise logic, then by Patrick Bet David's precise, surgical breakdown of the facts. What remained wasn't the inspirational poster hanging in a dorm room or the glossy memoir at a bookstore. It was the raw, inconvenient truth.
Obama slammed for whining about costs in the White House. Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. This is her speaking with, is this the diaries of a CEO, right? So, Rob, if you can play this clip, this is her talking about how expensive it was to live in the White House. Go for it.
It's expensive to live in the White House.
Yeah.
As many people don't know. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel to be on.
But the roast wasn't done, because for men like Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet David, this wasn't just about one man. It was about the culture that placed a crown on Obama's head and then banned any serious questions about how he got it, or whether he ever earned it. It was a takedown of the gatekeepers who turned honest critique into cultural heresy, and of a system that mistook lyrical speeches for lasting solutions. There were still layers to peel back, and Patrick wasn't about to let them stay hidden. He turned to Obama's golden boy status among the elite, how the former president became a fixture at celebrity-packed parties, late-night talk shows, and literary circles that treated his memoirs like sacred scripture. Patrick mocked the transformation from the supposed voice of the common man to the darling of the elite. A man who once championed working-class struggles, now living like modern royalty in Martha's Vineyard, delivering speeches on inequality from the steps of his multimillion-dollar mansion. And the book deals and speaking gigs. Patrick laid into them like a stand-up comic with a grudge. He described Obama cashing in with tech CEOs, Wall Street bankers, and global elites he once claimed to challenge, earning six figures for 30-minute keynotes that sounded more like polished TED talks than policy insight. Yet, somehow, he still managed to brand himself as the ethical compass of our time. The irony, Patrick joked, was so thick it could have paid off a dozen student loans and still left room for dessert. And then came another brutal point: Obama's carefully cultivated image as the champion of the younger generation. Patrick didn't buy it for a second. He rolled his eyes at the narrative that cast Obama as the youth whisperer, the cool, relatable leader with a hoodie and a hashtag, when in reality, he left millennials and Gen Z buried under mountains of debt and hollow promises. Patrick torched the contradiction. While Obama talked about fixing student loans and making college more affordable, tuition skyrocketed and government-backed debt exploded into a lifelong burden for millions. Joe jumped back in, throwing haymakers at the absurdity of Obama's post-presidency glow. He joked that the man seemed more obsessed with creating his Spotify playlists and delivering breezy podcast vibes than actually reckoning with the wreckage he left behind. If image alone were leadership, Joe quipped, Obama would be carved into Mount Rushmore with Beats headphones on. But when it came to substance, what Americans got, they said, wasn't transformation. It was a masterclass in branding. Speeches that stirred the soul but left the system untouched. Selfies, slow jams, late-night laughs, and viral moments, but precious little follow-through. And here's where it got darker. The tragedy wasn't just the gap between promise and performance. It was the stubborn refusal to acknowledge it. Not because people didn't know, but because they didn't want to know. Because admitting that the great political illusionist was just a slick salesman in a tailored suit meant admitting they'd been sold a dream and bought it.